Hello everyone, welcome to our next episode of Global Marketing Leaders. I am the co-host Anirudh Singla, founder and CEO of Pepper Content. Today I have with me the wonderful Shuchi Sarkar. She is the global CMO of LTI Mindtree and has historically been part of marketing leadership at amazing companies like AWS, HP, and Creo. Shuchi, it's such a delight to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast.
Thank you, Anirudh, for having me.
No, amazing. Shuchi, we typically, like to start from the history or the origins of the marketers we have. And it's always so enriching to learn about what got them going, what was their motivation to get into marketing. So just very curious, what was the first time you discovered that, hey, this is something exciting? And what was your first vantage point into marketing?
So I have to confess, like everybody who grew up in India, you became a doctor, an engineer, you did the IS or you did an MBA, right? So I went to do my MBA, and in my first year, I just discovered that I loved marketing. Basically, I love people and I'm very curious about the human psychology, the mind, what motivates them. I love talking to people. I love connecting people. And I just felt that this was the field that interested me the most. At that time, I felt, I'm not a numbers person. I don't want to do finance and, I didn't want to do HR. But I just felt that marketing was the right fit. And I love brands. I'm one of those suckers who my friends say, you are a marketer, yet you pay so much money for, for brands. But I love brands. I think, that's what motivates me so much. And so that's how I got into marketing right from my MBA days. And to be honest, I think everybody finds what you're best at. And I feel like this was my home.
Oh, very interesting. So what was your first stint like? What were you doing and how has that stint helped you? Because I think this is a very formative years of your life. The right mentors, leaders, they end up shaping your worldview about what you want to benchmark for. So I think what I'd love to know is what was your first stint like and what was the stint which changed you from someone in marketing to a marketing leader, where you literally, it was like an up jump for you. And this is where the real stuff starts in terms of challenges, what more and how you could unlock yourselves to even better stages.
Sure. So I started my career actually in advertising and I grew up in Ogilvy, which is, as you know, the brand university of the world. And so for me, fresh out of MBA, went to Ogilvy. And I thought that, oh my God, like this is it. And my very first day, the very first job that they gave me was a bunch of stamps and a bunch of envelopes and said, now stick stamps on this envelope. And here I am coming out of MBA thinking I'm walking on water. And suddenly your first job is to stick stamps on envelopes. But anyway, so that was my start in Ogilvy. And my second job was to buy props for a shoot. Wow. But eventually, got to do a lot of account strategy and management and understand. I think the one thing that Ogilvy taught me was the love for brands even further and really how to build brands. Even today, when I write a creative brief or I even look at any kind of work, I go back to basics, who's your target audience? What do you know about them? What's their current perception? What's their desired perception? What's your value prop? What are your brand pillars? I mean, that format that I learned way back in Ogilvy is stuck in my head.
Yes.
I don't think I can write this any other way. And, learning how to build brands, having the, luxury in advertising. I think the biggest thing is you work across so many categories, right? So we worked on Indian brands. I worked on multinational brands. I worked on something for the UNICEF called National Literacy Mission, which was actually my first brand in adult literacy. And we actually won many awards for that campaign, including David Ogilvy Award. And I got a certificate signed by David Ogilvy. I remember it's still my most treasured possession, especially since, he passed away. But that began a structured way of thinking about how do you build brands. And, at that time, advertising was about creating that emotion. You didn't have internet advertising, and you didn't have Facebook, and you didn't have LinkedIn.
Yes.
And so you were creating the TV commercials and the print ads and the outdoor and point of sale material and things like that. And so, one learned to understand what helped in those media, but most importantly, how to build human brands.
Yes.
And create that connection with whoever was your audience, whether it was a housewife, whether it was a kid you were selling biscuits to, or whether it was India Today, where, you were attracting elite readers, or, whichever other brand that you were trying to sell. And then I kind of felt like, I want to do the entire gamut of marketing, not just advertising. And, when I looked at brand managers that I was working with, ultimately you could propose whatever you wanted, but the decisions were being made by them.
Yes.
And so I said, I want to move over to marketing. And I joined, Motorola, which was at that time doing pagers and cell phones. And we were actually introducing that category in India. So learned how to really do category creation, because nobody understood what was a cell phone in India at that time. So, how do you build a new category? And, how do you also then do the two things: build category, create brand preference for yourself, and, set up distribution, set up the first Motorola shops in the country. And at the same time, how to do co-op marketing. That was a new kind of, new muscle that you were learning in the country, because co-op marketing was not something that was very common in India at that time. So, but you had to work with all the telecom players. So you needed to learn how to do co-op marketing, and how to go jointly to market with, at that time there was Hutchison Telecom and all of the things in the old days. For people and some of your viewers who might not know, those were some of the earlier telecom companies in India. And then, I moved to join Compaq Home Computers, which was at that time the largest consumer category in the world.
Wow.
Home computers. And so, again, the job over there was category creation. Why should you, as a young family, buy a home computer when you have a PC in your office? So, tapping into the education needs, and, the fact that Indians were so much about education and how a computer really helped in that was really the first thing that led for us to start creating a category again in the market. And then once again, differentiating Compaq from all the Indian brands like HCL and, a plethora of brands that existed at that time vis-a-vis other competitors like HP. And then HP actually bought Compaq. And so without changing jobs, my visiting card changed. And, within Compaq, I got a chance to move to the region, to Asia Pacific. So previously, when I was in Motorola, and I'd got married then, and my husband was based in Hong Kong. And so I had this crazy thing where I was, based in Hong Kong for half the month and half the month in India, and trying to manage India marketing from Hong Kong. But it also created in me an ambition that, I wanted to do something larger than just handle, one singular market.
Yes.
And so I took the opportunity of moving to the region with Singapore, with Compaq based in Singapore. And there I got to truly understand, different markets and the differences between selling in India and China and Australia and Singapore and Indonesia. And it was fascinating working with so many diverse people.
Yes.
And till today, I think this is the thing that I most enjoy, which is working with a diverse set of people, different cultures, different places that they are. I love understanding what motivates a mature market like Australia versus an emerging market like India or Indonesia or China. And understanding there at that time retail landscape, e-commerce was coming in at that time and starting to becoming big. You had big partners like Intel and Microsoft and all of that. And so a large part of my early formative life was all in pure consumer marketing. And I actually saw internet coming and Facebook and how all of the marketing changed when all these things happened. And then I moved, from Singapore, came back to run India marketing again, handled a lot of marketing addressed to small, medium businesses, even enterprises. Then went back to Singapore to handle HP's retail and e-commerce initiatives. So this was across the region. I ran all of retail and e-commerce. And I think, I advise all marketing people that doing a stint in product marketing, doing a stint in, the business side of the house is so important. The first time I went in Compaq, I didn't go in marketing. I was handling a P&L. I was handling a product line, which is all third-party accessories and options for computers. And when I went back, I went to run retail business for HP. And I think it's so important to do that because while marketing was my first love, and I call myself a marketing nerd. When somebody tells, introduce yourself, my first sentence is always, I'm a marketing nerd. And for me, but handling that business, having that thing of being able to understand a P&L or being able to understand how you sell things, whether it's to a channel or whether it's direct, I think it gives you a different perspective.
100%.
And also having worked in different markets, I think gives you that much more exposure and understanding. And then, I helped HP in Europe for a while, also running retail. And then I became the brand manager of Compaq worldwide. And that was an interesting job because we were trying to turn the business model of Compaq. And how do we make it our low-end offering, whereas HP was our high-end offering. And how do you use it to open emerging markets? And I think because I handled India and Compaq, I don't know if you remember, but was a very, very strong brand in India. So I think I got the job of creating this, and we opened markets like Argentina, Brazil, markets in Africa, etc. And then I moved to the US to actually head worldwide consumer marketing for HP. And I think those jobs in, handling moving from the region to a global job and doing a brand job in Compaq and then doing this worldwide consumer job even took me to a different stage because now I was handling worldwide. So I was dealing with markets like Europe and dealing with markets like Latin America and, US, and which is obviously the bread and butter, and Canada and things. And that was a pivotal moment because I realized that while, when you are in the region or you're in a country, while you can influence what is happening, actually, you're still largely doing a lot of execution with the strategy being set in the US. Really, you give inputs into the strategy, but finally it is decided here because the product is here, the business is here, the headquarters are here. So I was very keen to move to the US, and that's when I moved and started working on the worldwide consumer advertising. Wanted to actually have a hand in shaping the strategy, not just, being an executor or an inputter. Not to say that you don't do strategy in a country, in a region. You absolutely do that, but that's more, localizing for your needs. And so having come to the US, while I loved that, I wanted to again, I'm a very restless soul. So I kind of need to do different things all the time. And so I then went on to head product brand strategy, which was another different thing, which is really devising a brand architecture for HP across all its PC and print business. And then, I was like at this pivotal point that I felt I'd done a lot of consumer marketing and, I wanted to do and learn something new.
Yeah.
And I went to work for HP in the B2B business. So HP Enterprise, I was handling storage and convert systems and even servers. I think that was a very big pivot in my career. So I had this thing about going to the region, then going to the global, and now I went into enterprise after being a hardcore consumer marketer all my years. And I think that, that brought to me a lot of knowledge on, how a sales funnel works, how, in consumer marketing, you produce something and you sell it. But here the sales funnel was like 1 year and 1.5 years, and a data center could be like $20 million. And I was like, okay, this is completely, new and different things. And I learned a lot in that, how to really work with sales across the sales funnel, B2B marketing techniques. But, my consumer background brought a lot of difference to the B2B marketing because, they used to do very templated stuff. And I bought in this thinking that at the end of the day, the CIO is a consumer.
They're human.
He's a human. His motivations are very human. Maybe he's buying a data center, but he is a person. And the kind of content you produce has to engage him just as in consumer. And you have to speak to his head and his heart, both. And so, we did a lot of guerrilla marketing and, AMC was like some 22% market share and we were like 4% market share. And so we did a lot of guerrilla marketing, competitive advertising for the first time in my career. Would never have done it if we were the market leaders. But when you're such a small player compared to this giant, you had to do something to gain attention.
Totally.
So, and enterprise marketing won bunch of awards which they had never won. And I think it all came from me being able to bring my consumer, marketing skills to this B2B. Then HP split and I came to run America's print marketing. So all of US, Mexico and Latin America.
Very interesting.
And that was my first field job in America. So I'd done global, but this was now field marketing. So once again, working with retail and with commercial channels. So, commercial is like CDW and retail is like Best Buy and Staples. So running all of that, but running all of the advertising, the entire print portfolio, both commercial, enterprise and consumer. And that was, that was an amazingly different experience. Like I had been to CES many times while in my global career, but now CES was your customers.
It's very different now.
It's a very different thing outlook when you are handling Americas versus coming as a global person to do something there.
100%.
And so that was an interesting stint. And, I, at that point of time, then I went on to becoming the global marketing head for HP's graphic solutions business. So this was back to B2B, to doing large printing machines, which actually sometimes people have to buy new factories to fit those machines because they produce all your packaging, your retail signages, your, stuff for trade shows and all your collaterals, direct mailers and stuff like that. So HP used to sell to printers who in turn used to sell to brands. And so, that was another very interesting business. And, in all of these places tried to make, I think one of the things that, in fact, it's my first word that you'll read on LinkedIn in my bio, which is transformative, which is in all the 3 or 4 last roles that I did in HP, my role was to transform the marketing function. So, take it from the 80s kind of marketing or 90s kind of marketing into to the 2000s world of, data and content and how do you build customer journeys and content journeys and all of that. And then after doing that for about 2 years, I was I had done everything in HP. And, I was like, what's going to be my next thing? And my daughter was going to go off to college after a year. And I was like, she's going on her new adventure. What is going to be my next new adventure? And so I went to something completely different, which was a startup in biotech. So I'd done technology all my life. I went to a biotech and I was the number one marketing employee. So I had to now work. I had a budget of over 100 million in HP, 150 team, and I went as the first marketing employee.
What was the marketing budget like, if I may ask?
It was under $1 million, let me tell you, when I began. And then, of course, we grew the budget and we grew the team and everything. But this was your typical startup, right? It was very a series A, early stage kind of thing. And then we looked at, and it was biotech. And top of that, it was cannabinoids, which is not cannabis, but all the other cannabinoids that are meant for, not only medical purposes. So, but COVID hit. And the company decided to pivot to actually launching what was called Bud Love, the world's first legal cannabis mixer. So this was not cannabis on its own, but it was a cannabis mixer to add to your cannabis to reduce the cannabis that you take. So instead of 1 gram of cannabis, you could now take 0.2 and mix 0.8 of this, yet have that same kind of effect. And it's better because it doesn't lead to paranoia and coughing and all that. And suddenly I was thrown into a world which was even more unknown to me, right? I'm not a smoker. And I remember we hired a cannabis agency because none of us came from cannabis background. We were all from, biotech or something like that. And I remember my first meeting, and it was in COVID times, and this agency had an office where they had the office in the center and they all stayed in rooms around the agency. And, they all had tattoos. And when I asked I'd given them a brief. So I was expecting them to show me a strategy. And they just came and said, here's the name, here's the identity. And I'm like, but where's the strategy? But that's the way cannabis works. And it was so fun because 10 minutes into the meeting, they were all vaping. And it was something for imagine coming from a very structured background to, this. So this is my retirement project from tech marketing to cannabis marketing. But it was the most fun thing that I've done. For about 6-8 months, I did that. And then I decided to go back to tech and went to AWS. And AWS was an incredible experience as well, dealing with the leadership principles of Amazon, which are so famous, and, all their customer obsession, innovation.
Was it a different kind of rigor we are talking about?
Yes, it's completely different. I think, AWS truly is very customer obsessed and very innovation led, and it's very intense. Like, you really, the doc culture, all the kind of ways that they have of working are very unique. I mean, it was very different, and you learned a lot.
And how tough is it? And because of the themes that you are talking about, how tough is it to adapt to these new business lines and new cultures? Because even the way you're talking about HP, I think is just so fascinating and amazing to see that all of them are almost like new lines of businesses, just under a common brand name. But I think all of them are so different problem statements. And as a leader, when you're being brought on, the logic is for you to absorb the problems quickly and then act.
Yes.
So going from zero to high pressure and then that stream, how were you able to do that? And as even for other marketers who are in this zone, right? What mental models or frameworks allowed you to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anirudh. I think for me, if you understand fundamentals of marketing, it doesn't matter what category you do. So, when I talk to recruiters and they say, oh, this job wants cyber security, software experience, and a bunch of other things. I'm like, how do you find people like that? The fact is today, super specialization actually for me, it's the industry is making too much about it. I think that diverse point of views actually lead to a richness. If you hire more of the same, you're going to get the same. And today industries need to be innovative and they need to think differently. But coming back to your question, I think it's, if you understand the fundamentals of marketing and you start with your insights, you start with who is your customer? What are their challenges? What are their pain points? What are their motivations? It doesn't matter what category you are in. And of course, you have to understand the product, the technology, whether it's a cloud solution or whether it's selling a PC or whether it's selling a server or it's selling a cannabinoid. At the end of the day, you have to understand who your customer is, what are the insights you have about the market, what are the market trends, what are your customers' challenges. And I always tell people, unless your messaging resonates with the customer's challenge, you will fail. And to me, understanding that is the biggest thing. And then you need to understand whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's a technology, it doesn't matter. What is it in your product that is resonating with the customer? How is it competitively different? Okay. And no longer we are in the world of USPs, to be very honest. I mean, how many products can claim true USPs? So you have to really put your mind to understand, how do you create a differentiated story in the mind of the customer? And so you spend a lot of time on that. And then the intersection of the customer insights, which I call the customer truth, and the product truth, which could be product, service, solution, doesn't matter. Intersection of those two give you your value proposition.
Very interesting.
And to me, if you've arrived at that and your brand pillars or your, communication pillars, that is the mental framework I use all the time for whatever I want to get. And I start from, what is source of business? Where is your business going to come from? Who is your target persona? Building the customer journey after you've done this work. How do you build the customer journey? How do you build the content journey? How do you activate the content? I think if you follow this model, doesn't matter whatever you are selling. And then, of course, don't forget there's a big aspect of people. When I went to do HP Enterprise, all my people were in Fort Collins. I was the only person in Palo Alto. And I went there and to me, storage was, like a CD. I had no idea what enterprise storage was. And then they presented this, storage products to me, and I just applied this mental model that I told you. And actually within 30 days, I presented a whole marketing plan to the business unit. And they were shocked. Like, how in 30 days did you understand the business? But I had a great team that helped me quickly grasp the product, the technology. And to be honest, I'm not an engineer, so I don't go into the innards of the technology. What I'm interested in is what are the benefits of this technology. And as long as you can enumerate that to me and you can get that, then I can communicate that very effectively through compelling storytelling, right? But I remember when I went there, everybody in Fort Collins, they owned a camper and they went on, hikes. They all had a bear experience. They all had a boat. And I was like, I grew up in India. I did not do any of these things. So I was like, oh my God, I have no bear stories. I have very limited experience with camping, hiking, etc. Of course, I hike a lot now in the Bay Area, and then I have no boat. So, how do I really gel with this team? But we found commonality, people started seeing, okay, this is who you are. I understood them a bit more, and it was interesting. So I've always walked into teams where I know no one. And I'm usually very different, but that's the beauty of being able to create teams with different people, different points of view. Anyway, to round off, I think AWS was a completely different culture, but understanding it and the rigor, again, it was a lot of learning and, how do you do cloud and things like that. And, for some personal reasons, I wanted to move to a company that had connections with India and that I could go back home a little bit more. And so LTI Mindtree came up as an opportunity. And this was again a new category. I've never worked in services.
You're telling me this.
To be honest, I've never even worked for an Indian company.
Oh, yes.
So it was again learning a completely different culture. Even though I'm Indian, I feel like mentally at many times I have, I've tried to be more global in my outlook, and that's the way all my experiences of the last 20 years have taken me.
Yes.
And so it was just a bit of, recalibration, as they say. So yeah, those are my moments and my journey and what has helped me.
Shuchi, it felt like you've just added about 5-6 marketing careers into one career. It's so rich.
Thank you.
Amazing experiences. Thank you so much for sharing. We were just having a CMO dinner yesterday, and we saw this interesting thing. There were these two questions also come out of your experiences, which is marketing leaders often feel overshadowed by having to justify for their role or their outcome or their impact on business. And you touched upon something very beautiful, which is you were actually able to truly understand business once you became a P&L owner and you were heading the business. And then I think even business and metrics give you a very different perspective about running business or marketing or spend, interestingly. So to in general marketers who are struggling with this thought process of having to justify their role, justify the value of marketing in an organization, and this typical marketing versus sales play, how would you go about sharing your perspective on the same?
Yeah. So let me tell you, I was like this. I used to feel so apologetic because I used to look at myself as as the person who is an expense center. The minute I changed my model in my own mind to say I'm a growth driver, my entire mental model shifted. I was no longer apologetic about, I'm an expense center, I'm something that you can just do away with. If your quarter is not good, just cut the marketing budget and make the bottom line and tell the Wall Street what a great job you've done, right? But the point is that the minute you shift that, you get a different understanding of who you are and your place in the organization. And it's even today, I fight, budget cuts and marketing being perceived as, that fluff. But with technology, and this is why I love marketing today, in today's time, and I envy marketers who are going to be able to do this for the next 20 years, is the fact that you can justify the ROI so well on every dollar that you spend. So I am able to show how we are growing the business, how through A/B testing, how we are actually delivering where we are involved versus where we are not involved, being able to show without marketing what the impact would be. And if your own customer tells you that, because you don't have a brand, you're a brake on the company's growth, I think you can really make up people sit up and say, this is the need of the hour, the need to invest in brand. I think sales teams, I think the CFOs, the progressive CFOs, the progressive CROs, the progressive CEO has learned the need to have a marketer in the boardroom, as well as understood that marketing is an investment and not a cost center. And so I think that having these progressive leaders combined with the fact that, you can now show your direct impact. Plus, my boss currently, he's a great guy and he tells me, sometimes you have to prove your value by being absent. And so not doing something also shows how valuable you are. And so I think for me, those are the ways that marketers can actually show their value. But the first thing is to believe in yourself
Yes.
and change your own mental model, that you're not an expense center, that you're not doing fluff, that you're not the pretty picture person, that you're actually driving the growth of the business. The minute you believe that, you see how your own attitude to things will change.
No, that's amazing. That's a very wonderful thought. And, just adding on, and I think taking a cue from, because you've done these different stints in different companies, and that 0 to 30, 30 to 90-day period, right? Often, a lot of times when people hire new CMOs, the mindset is, hey, this person comes in to transform my marketing,
Yes.
right? And transforming marketing means, so once marketing transformation, and everything we personally feel at Pepper boils down a lot to your messaging and eventually your content, because content drives that transformation. How have you seen these transformations with your previous companies? In fact, you've just joined LTM and it's been a couple of months for you as well. So what's your framework of driving marketing and content transformation in a company that you're joining in? Like, what parameters, what paradigms, what frame of references are you looking at that enable you to be effective?
Yeah. I'll round off your last question, and it's linked to what I'm going to say. So, I think that mental model around ROI is also close engagement with sales. And I'll tell you the impact of the next question, why. I think any marketer coming in, you have to work closely together with sales. Doesn't matter whether you're doing B2B or B2C.
Yes.
Okay. And you have to be looking at business. The minute that you can shift the conversation with your internal stakeholders from a pure marketing conversation to a business conversation, and then being able to say how marketing plays a role, is really the critical shift as well that marketers must make. If you keep on talking only about, the picture or the event or whatever, you're never going to get there.
They don't care.
Learn to speak their language. How are you going to give funnel, or how are you going to get more footfalls into the showroom, or how are you going to encourage more visitors to the e-commerce, and talk about that and opportunities and qualified leads, and you'll see the conversation changing. But coming back to that, I think what's important is to really understand, like I said, what is your value proposition, your key messaging, developing that framework, but developing that framework across the customer journey. So understanding the sales funnel, but at the same time understanding what is the customer's journey. How are you, attracting their attention? Where are you in the evaluation phase, in the consideration, exploration, consideration, purchase, and post-purchase? If you were to build out a simple 5-stage funnel, really understanding that, understanding the customer's pain points across the journey, understanding your own messaging across the journey, and then building content that actually reflects that the pain points and the messaging is really critical and key. And, making that content consumable. I think today, most people, and I say this to my team all the time, and people have taught me this. It's not that I invented it. I think most people suffer from ADHD of some kind or the other. And you have very little time to gain a customer's attention, right? And so what kind of content, how compelling is it? How engaging is it? Is so critical to be able to actually build the right content to change and engage with your customer and take them across the funnel, so that your engagement doesn't end just here, but you can progressively take them through that. And that is only possible through content today. And not only having the right content, but also placing the content in the right channels.
How it gets distributed.
Correct. People tend to always say it's a content play. It's not just a content play. It's a content and an activation play. But today, without that, you will not be able to either open net new logos or be able to keep your current customers engaged. And, a very wise marketer once taught me and told me that you can never bore your customer into seeing or reading anything that you've produced. And so when I look at content, my first thing is, am I really going to get the customer's attention?
Yeah.
Is this going to bore the customer?
Yes.
Or is it going to resonate with them because of what we are actually saying in this piece of content? And that's really how, and how is it going to progress them to the next stage of the customer journey?
Yes.
How is it going to help us, really, create that traction across the sales funnel? And so for me, that is the most important kind of mental framework that I have when I'm looking at content, and doesn't matter for whatever category or campaign or product line, service line, whatever, doesn't matter.
Very interesting. So I think I'd love to head to, I think, towards the later parts of these conversations, which is, do you fundamentally believe an enterprise today needs a content operating system? Like of maybe services, technology, tooling, or products which govern like a framework about how this is disseminated across the org? Because from what you're also saying, it needs both strategy as well as activation. And personally, do you feel is there a need for something like that, like this Salesforce for sales? Do you have a mindset about an operating system for content?
I think that's an amazingly interesting thought. I think that what you're saying is absolutely right. You do need an operating system. I think you not only need an operating system, you also need governance. Today in a company, in most companies, there's too much of content and there's poor quality content.
Yes.
Everybody is in this race to, produce POVs. Who's writing the POV?
Yes.
Does that person even have credibility? That's like somebody else would want to read that POV. You can't, and I'm not trying to be mean, but honestly, if you want to have somebody read a POV, it has to come from a credible source, right? There has to be something to say, okay, I'm publishing this POV so somebody will read.
Yes.
So I think an operating system that allows you to produce the right content and then disseminate it and understand its effectiveness, optimize it so that you are not only optimizing that content, but also optimizing content in the future is very critical. But then also having the right rules and governance set through it so that you're not producing trashy content at the end of the day.
No, makes sense. I think that's very interesting. I think I love to keep hearing more of you, but I think in just spirit of time, we have this rapid fire we do with a lot of our guests where the format. I'll be asking you quick couple of questions, but you have less than 10 seconds to answer.
Okay. This is going to be fun. I have to be very much on my shoes now. Okay.
Yes. So, what's your favorite brand?
Favorite brand? I would say just as a brand, it's Nike.
Got it. AWS culture versus HP culture.
HP culture.
AWS speed versus HP speed.
AWS speed.
If you were to go start your own company today, what are the first 3 hires you'll make?
First 3 hires I'll make. Just in marketing or
overall?
I think the first person that I would hire would be of course, a technology person or whoever is the product person, depending upon what the product is. I would hire a CMO and a CFO.
At the earliest?
Maybe not a CMO, but a marketing person, a finance person, and a product person. I think all 3 today are so important because a product person will drive your technology, product, whatever you're creating.
Yeah.
A finance person will help you raise the money, manage your books, do whatever. But I think marketing is so critical to a startup.
Yeah.
And given my Creo experience and my own thing where they hired me so early, I felt it made a much more difference to them than it made to anybody. So I would hire a marketing person,
Right. From these 3 marketing functions, which one do you love? Which one do you dislike the most?
Okay.
And just as a function, not linked to any team. Product marketing, brand marketing, and demand gen?
I love brand marketing. Second would be demand gen, and third is product marketing.
Got it. So that's a polite way of saying. And it's very curious. And which geography has been the best for you? Which geography do you love selling to?
I love selling in the Americas. I think it's most competitive, but the customer is so diverse. And I love selling in India because that's where I grew up and that's where I understood all about consumer marketing. But these would be my favorites. But if I had to choose one, I'd probably choose America just for the expanse.
Makes sense. And just moving on to some personal questions. East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast.
And in India, what's your favorite city?
Goa.
Goa. Okay. And what's your favorite comfort food?
My favorite comfort food? Oh, God. If I tell you that, you're not going to have me on my show again. My favoriteest comfort food is French fries.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And whenever you're looking to, detach from the world, what's that one comfort place you end up going to?
I just like anything that has nature. So I sometimes just sit outside in my backyard and absorb the green. Or if I can and I'm feeling up to it, I'll just drive down to the beach, which is not so far away for us. But anything to do with nature is my Zen place. Especially it has to be green. I love being surrounded by greenery.
Shuchi, it was so amazing knowing you. Your way of explaining things is very storytelling driven. So that the brand marketing comes out in how you speak, because we as audiences, and I'm sure a lot of people who are going to be watching this, can totally beat through your journey as you went about. Thank you so much for your time today with us. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.